All right, how are y'all doing?
Doing good.
Good.
Coach, thank you for coming on the podcast with us here.
Sure. Sure.
All right.
And who am I talking to now?
This is Turner right here talking to you,
Okay.
and Landon's on here as well.
Okay.
I can only see one, but it's working right now, so it's good. All right, Coach, are you ready to get started with the podcast?
Now, just to make sure, I wasn't supposed to be on Zoom or anything, right?
No, sir. It's just a call.
Okay. Because I'm a lot more attractive on phone calls than I am on a Zoom call.
I feel that.
And how long have you guys been doing this?
I've been doing it for about probably a year and a half, and I got Landon on this summer with me because I had him on we talked about the NBA bubble probably
Uh-huh.
whenever that was going on, and
Yeah.
he's got a good basketball mind like I do, and he can provide extra questions, and so I'd have him on with
Landon,
me.
are you an Asbury student, or are you all just friends some other way?
We went to high school together, my junior and senior year, and then I go to Western Kentucky University right now.
So you're from Nicholasville?
Yes, sir. I went to West Jessamine. I graduated in 2020.
Okay. All right. I graduated from Jessamine County High School in 1990.
There you go.
So, so I guess I walked the same halls.
Right.
But yeah, I'm ready to fire away whenever you guys want to hit start. I'm fine.
All right.
Let's
Perfect.
do it.
So the first question that I mainly ask people is, how did you get to where you are today with coaching?
Well, I learned later in life that I had a unique situation that I always knew what I wanted to do. I sort of thought growing up everybody just kind of knew what they wanted to do with their life, and I later found out that wasn't the case. So I guess I was pretty lucky in that regard, and I always wanted to coach, and how to go about that path and navigating through it and all that, of course, I had no clue about. So when I was in high school, I was a little bit of a late bloomer athletically, but was fortunate enough to get to play college sports. And through my experiences in college sports, I started learning a little bit of the ways of the world of maybe how to approach a coaching career. And when I finished my playing career at Asbury, I began coaching as an assistant there for a few years, and that's kind of how it all started. Throughout that time, of course, I did. I was probably one of the first people in Central Kentucky to do the private lesson thing. In the 90s, nobody was doing that back then, and I had picked it up from Jerry Meyer, who was Don Meyer's son. Don Meyer is the legendary coach from Lipscomb University, and I actually observed Jerry giving private instructional lessons to people and to young players, and I was kind of fascinated with that. So I did that for several years as well while I was coaching at Asbury, which of course along the way, I stayed very curious on the teaching aspects of skill development and things of that nature. So, but as leaving Asbury, I got my first head coaching job at St. Catherine College when it was a junior college in Kentucky, and was there for 4 years, and then moved on to Lambeth University in Tennessee for 7 years, and then I've been at Union here for 10 years now.
Growing up, what athletes in any sport did you look up to?
Well, I grew up in Central Kentucky, so obviously all the UK basketball players, Rex Chapman was somebody I looked up to a lot as a UK athlete. Professionally speaking, I'm a close to being a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan. Eric Davis, who played for the Reds back in the mid '80s and late '80s, was probably one of the top players in the sport at that time. He was a pretty dynamic athlete, so I looked up to him quite a bit. Larry Bird was my favorite basketball pro player. The Celtics were really good in the '80s, and basketball wasn't on TV very often back then. And the Celtics were the team that was on TV when it was televised. They were on the most, so I naturally gravitated, toward watching him and enjoying him and looking up to how he played the game. And then Jack Nicklaus was actually somebody that I looked up to quite a bit as well, and how he carried himself and the class he held himself with throughout, wins and losses. So those are the guys that I sort of, would try to acclimate myself to and emulate at times and that kind of thing, or try to emulate anyway.
Mm-hmm. Growing up, did you have like a favorite moment like playing basketball?
Well, it probably changed over the years. It probably, but I was fortunate enough to get to play the state tournament. I was on a really good high school team, and it was the first team in Jessamine County to get to do that. And that was back when the University of Kentucky basketball program was on probation, so they weren't on television for a couple of years. So the high school game in Kentucky became ever more popular because there was no other way to get your basketball fixed than to go to watch high school games. So we played in front of a lot of people in every game, and that was back when the state tournament had gone back and forth from Louisville to Lexington every year. They rotated, and that year was in Louisville, and I think the two games we played, Freedom Hall was sold out. So that was kind of a neat experience. But playing in the regional tournament, we got to play in Memorial Coliseum in Lexington, and those games were pretty memorable. We got to play 3 games, and it was capacity crowds. It was just a crazy environment. It was a lot to experience for a teenager. I was fortunate to play pretty well in the games, and so that was a blessing. And so those are pretty fun experiences.
Mm-hmm. Landon, you want to go to some of your questions?
Yeah. Hey, Coach. In your first season as the head coach of Union, you took an 8-23 team and turned it into a 15-14 team. And from then on, I've had a winning percentage of 740 plus each year. So, what did it take to turn the program around into what it's become today?
Well, first of all, it is hard to win, and you have to have, obviously, the talent level has to be really good. That's the constant, of course. And the first couple recruiting classes, that was really challenging here because they had to. I was sort of selling a dream, if you will, because we hadn't done it yet, and the program had been struggling, and the year before or whatever. So it was challenging, and our resources, scholarshiping, and all this kind of thing was limited, and all this. So it took a lot of hard work to find players that were available that maybe other people were passing on. That's kind of the makeup of our first few teams. Talented guys that had maybe just been under recruited, or maybe had gone to a place and not been successful in athletically or academically, and spent time getting other things in order to allowing themselves to play again. So it took a lot of recruiting work. I mean, I spent a lot of time traveling, looking at talent, and teams that we had, I've told those guys year after year how incredibly important those guys were, because after that, we didn't have to sell a dream. We could sell, show them what we have done, the culture we had developed, and it was an easier sell. Now, it wasn't easier to sign people, but it was, at least we could tell them, hey, we're doing some good things here, that type of thing. But to answer your question, when I got here, there was only a couple players that were left over, so it was a pretty tough situation when I first got here. So we were just trying to get my first year just a team assembled, and then spent that first season really trying to improve our roster as much as we possibly could.
So to kind of go off of like what you just said, so when you were looking at taking the job at Union, what kind of like factors did you look at and to decide whether it was going to be a good long-term investment for you, rather than just kind of staying where you were?
Sure. Well, you may not know this, but I was actually out of college coaching for a season. Lambeth University, the school that I was at, actually went bankrupt and closed, and so the following season, that happened in the summer, and there wasn't very many coaching jobs available. So I actually we relocated to Las Vegas for a year and spent time doing private instruction. That was the year the NBA was in a lockout in 2011. So there were a lot of pro guys living in Las Vegas in the summer and fall and the winter. The NBA season that year didn't start until after Christmas, so there was lots of pros out there. So I kind of rubbed elbows with instructors and things of that nature, and used that time to connect with the sport in a different way. And then the Union happened to reach out to me in the spring, and that's kind of how that happened. So it was an easy decision because I wasn't coaching. So it was either stay there and get involved more in a deeper fashion in the instructional world of skill development, or get back into the college game. And so I knew that it was probably timing wise, it was probably better off for my career to jump back in the college game.
Seems like you made a pretty good choice. So I'll kind of go off of, you were talking about recruiting a little bit. So when recruiting for guys to come into your program, what is like the number one thing you look at besides talent-wise to keep your program on the upward trajectory that it's been on?
That's a really good question. And by the way, I got to say, I think this is just really neat that you guys are doing this. I don't know how many other people in your all's demographic are taking the time to explore the sport and the way you all are doing it. And I just think it's terrific. And I tell my assistant coaches all the time to continue to stay curious about the sport, not in schemes and in recruiting philosophies, just in every way that you can possibly imagine, to stay curious. Don't ever think you've got it figured out. And the platform you guys are utilizing here to explore our sport, I think it's great. And I think it'd be neat if more people took what you all were doing and copied it. I think our sport would be better off. And I think you guys, as much as you already know, are gonna be in a great learning situation, and plus everybody that listens, and I listen to basketball podcast all the time and pick up ideas here and there, so I think it's just a great thing. But to answer your question, I suppose my interaction with the player, even though they may not know it, is pretty critical. You can sense by talking to somebody how much this means to them. And we live in a kind of a remote area here, and we are not for everybody. And our program, it's demanding. mean a lot to them in order for them to appreciate it, to enjoy it here, and to get something out of it. If it's not super meaningful in their life, this is definitely not the place for them. And so I try to detect that in my conversations with them. And of course, every guy likes basketball or loves it to some degree. But does it mean enough to him that that you think the commitment is going to be so deep that he is going to be able to get through tough times and go through all the demands and try to have an expectation that's probably higher than he ever thought about having? Because once they get here, we explain to them, we're trying to do everything that the best there is. We're not just trying to be pretty good. And so that's really what I try to learn from them on how important is this to them, and is there a decent rapport between myself and the player? Of course, that's that's not altogether authentic. The first time or two you speak to somebody, but that can certainly develop. But there's a lot of guys who want to win, and who want to be good, and who want to win championships. But do they want to spend the time doing the things that are necessary for those things to take place? That's a totally different stratosphere of a spot to be in. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out when I'm talking to them is, do I think this person is going to be able to go through the things it takes to being successful here? So that's probably the main thing I'm thinking of.
Well, Ernie, you want to go ahead?
Mm-hmm. So, correct me if I'm wrong, was it 2017 that you all won the NAIA National Championship?
We did, that's right.
Talk to me through that experience. Like, did you, coming into that season, did you feel like that team was, more special than, the ones that you had in the past?
So this is funny now. So, I was about as been out of shape that fall that I'd ever been in. I thought we were going to be awful, okay? I thought it was going to be my worst year coaching at Union. And, in fact, I thought we were going to be so bad that I moved up 3 junior varsity players at the beginning of October to the varsity team, okay? Our fall did not go very well in a lot of different ways. And I was for us to have won the national championship that year, there wasn't a more surprised person on planet Earth than myself. It was pretty amazing. In fact, we were 1-3 to begin the season, okay, and not only were we 1-3, you're 1-3, but you play good and you're playing good competition. Okay, we were 1-3 and didn't play well, and we lost at Pikeville by a bunch, and it was our last loss of the season. Of course, at the time, I didn't know this, and this is in early November. We ended up winning 33 games in a row, which, of course, is just, kind of unbelievable. But our next game that we played after the Pikeville game was a conference game, and we prepared so poorly for that game. We spent a lot of time in game prep here. If we have 2 days to prep, we may actually meet up physically 4 or 5 or 6 times to go over stuff, because, for 20 minutes here, 80, an hour here, 2 hours there, that kind of thing. And I was so unhappy with how we prepped, that we had kind of an ugly moment that afternoon before the game. And I do not recommend this to any coach, by the way. And I think it's the last time I've ever done this. I actually kicked my team out of the gym during our walkthrough game prep thing in the afternoon of our ball game. And I was convinced we were not only were we going to lose, that we were going to lose by a bunch. And we ended up winning that game. And apparently, I learned later that some of the returning players kind of held court in the locker room about how to approach the day and all this, daily routines for us and all this. And then we just kind of slowly but surely continued to get better and kept winning games. And then we had a couple players that were in our program at the time that actually weren't playing and weren't eligible until second semester. and those players were key, key add-ons for us. So, but to win the nat, we actually were ranked number one in the country later on in the season, which I thought we were overrated. I knew we were good. I didn't think we were number one in the country good. And then when we go to the national tournament and of course winning it, I thought, well, I guess maybe we are pretty good, And the teams that we had to beat to win the national championship were kind of murderers row. I was just talking about it today. We had to beat College of Idaho in the second round, who I think is probably the best team we've ever played here in my 10 years. We had to beat Indiana Wesleyan in the Final Four. We had to beat Cornerstone, who had spent a lot of that season as the number one team in the country, and they had just won the national championship the year before. So we had to beat them in the national championship game. So we definitely earned it and definitely deserved it. But it was obviously it turned into a magical season. But September and October were in early November was a pretty rough time for us that year.
How was that tournament experience like with the NAIA national tournament? Like, I mean, how was that experience for you?
It is. If you ask any of my players, they'll tell you how it is an absolutely magical, neat experience. It is, of course, we've been to 9 in a row, which is just kind of unbelievable, and it is a really special experience, and there's a big time feel about it. The way the hospitality that's taking place, and I'm mainly speaking of when it was held in Branson, Missouri. My teams at Lambeth had been to Kansas City at that time 3 years in a row, and that was the same deal there. I mean, it's a big time feel, so it's pretty special.
Is that 2017 year, was that your favorite year? I mean, favorite like moment coaching, or do you have another like memorable one that sticks out?
Wow, that's so hard. A moment is hard. That's a really good question. And I'm one of these guys, like when I see, sometimes you can actually see the light bulb, the proverbial light bulb go off over a guy's head, right? When he finally gets something, whatever you're talking about, whether it's his effort level or how to set how important it is to actually set that screen or to get that rebound or to sprint back on defense, because what we emphasize here, the things that players don't lay around dreaming about. We emphasize sprinting. We emphasize the blue collar stuff. If you're the screen setter and don't set it, you're probably coming out of the game. Stuff like that, So we emphasize those items here pretty heavily. And when a player gets to the point where he's doing things the right way for the right reasons, instead of doing things the right way because he doesn't want the coach to take him out of the game. It's two different mindsets. That's a pretty neat moment for me. And when when my players get to that point, that they rarely go back to the other side. They've reached a threshold where, okay, you can talk to them and communicate to them at a different level now, at kind of almost like a more mature level. And so to me, and I know that's not really a fancy way of answering the question, but to me, I really get a kick out of that. But as far as, moments for my team, I get a kick out of, we've won 9 conference championships in a row. And I'm not so sure that might not be, as impressive as winning a national championship, right? But when our guys celebrate when we win a conference championship, like we've just won the global world championship, and because we talk about it so much and they work so hard for it, that when they enjoy that moment, I really get a big kick out of that. And those moments are my favorite, when I see my players enjoying, and getting out of what they put into it. That's just a neat time for me.
Who are some of your favorite players to watch in any level nowadays?
Oh wow, Now, I'm like most people. I enjoy watching Steph Curry play. I actually try to watch a lot of NBA. I've got some friends and guys I know that are at that level in one way, shape, or form, and so I'm always intrigued by their teams, how they're doing. Every now and again, I'll get to exchange a phone call or text message. So I'm sort of curious about the inner workings of their teams and all that. But one of the surprises is there was a guy that just retired. That he played for a long time named Jamal Crawford. He's kind of he's not a superstar, but he was sort of a non-superstar that for whatever the reason, I just enjoyed watching him play. He was entertaining to me. But I'm trying to think of other players right now. I'm embarrassed to run through the gamut of players. And I'm kind of an NBA junkie, believe it or not. I'm the guy on a Wednesday night that'll watch the Portland Sacramento game on TV late at night on my NBA TV pass. So I'm kind of one of those type of guys. But I'm usually watching schemes and defensive rotations and all these kind of crazy things.
What's your opinion on the Michael Jordan and LeBron debate?
In the debate of who's the better player?
Yes, sir.
Oh, to be honest with you, I really don't pay attention to that. Their skill sets are a little bit different. Their personalities are a little bit different. I've lived through both players' careers, so I've often wondered, wouldn't it be more interesting, or maybe it wouldn't be, but I think it'd be more interesting if you took sort of two average NBA players and compared them to see what people would think, and maybe like the eighth best player off the Milwaukee Bucks and the eighth best player off the Spurs, or they, and argue which one of those guys is better, because the MJ LeBron debate is such an easy one to have, but I guess if somebody stuck a gun to my head, I would side with the Jordan side of it, but obviously LeBron is unbelievable.
With any level of basketball, do you want to see a change, with kind of a tweak in the rule set, kind of like how they just moved the 3-point back, in some levels? Do you want to see any small changes like that?
Well, some subtle things. I don't like I think the block charge rule just in general. I think that the spirit of that original placement of that rule years ago is not being utilized. I think it's not intended to be called or be utilized in the way that it was originally put in as a rule. So and my team does a great job of taking charges, by the way, but I don't like the block charge. I think around the paint, you almost shouldn't be allowed to try to take a charge. I know that sounds very odd, but I actually think that would clean up some of the contact on the inside. And if you can't stop a guy from scoring it, just guarding him, I don't think you should be able to stand still and fall down and act like the guy ran over you. That's kind of an annoying scenario. Now, if a guy just completely runs over a guy, then it should be a foul, but that doesn't happen that often. Another thing that people think I'm a little out there on is I wished our level of basketball was a second semester sport only. I wish our season started in January and game-wise and finished in late March. And I think if you fit it on a calendar a certain way, I think you could do it, or maybe even into the first week of April. Our our season is the longest season of any sports season in college sports, the NAIA basketball season. So I think we should shorten our season up, and to start playing games in late October and finish playing games in mid-March that's a pretty long time for a person's body to be going through that, in my opinion.
With the game of basketball like evolving a little bit, a lot of people are starting to shoot more threes than like trying to grit and grind inside. Do you see the traditional big man still like being effective like in a lot of levels of basketball?
For us, he would. Now on our national championship team, we did not have a traditional post. We had, and we didn't shoot it that well actually. We had a really nice undersized point guard, and then we had a bunch of small forward type guys, like a bunch of 6'5" to 6'7" guys, and we really didn't have just a tremendously high level 3-point. I think our team 3-point percentage that year was probably around 31 or 32%. So I think you can be successful, and this has been healthy debates that I've had actually with some of my NBA friends. And one of them was in the playoffs this year, and last fall we were going back and forth about the 3-point metric, and I think the analytics of all this are very vital, but I think you have to play each possession that fits the skill set of the team that's on the floor at that particular time. So I think you have to be mindful of that. At our level, if you're going to recruit for that type of analytical team that they're going to shoot a bunch of threes, well then have a bunch of guys that can actually make the shot. It's a hard shot to make at a high level in college, and if you don't make it, it can really lead to nice transition for the other team. So I'm not saying don't shoot it. I'm not saying don't shoot it a lot, but if you're going to, in my opinion, I think you should work on long-range offensive rebounding to get another possession, and or be really good at transition defense on 3-point misses. And how do you work on that, right? That's not the easiest thing to work on. But I think we actually work on that. But and it can be ugly to work on, and we just kind of go through all kinds of scenarios of how to try to get organized so the team can't score in transition. So it's not going away, that's for sure. But for us, I think a traditional post player would work very nicely the way we play. We can also work without one. But I tend to if a guy can score it at a good level on the interior, we would definitely utilize that here.
With more options for like 18, 19-year-olds, like they can go to. When I'm mainly talking about like 5 stars here. They can go to college. They can go to like Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, all of them. But they've also got more options like the G League Ignite, for example. Like, what do you think is the better option for these athletes?
To each his own, and that's probably something, I don't know that I'd be an expert on that. If I was advising someone on that had that option, if they were good enough, I would tend to think that the college experience might be a touch healthier, but I really don't. I'm out of touch with the G League Ignite stuff. I'm not. I don't have working knowledge of all the inner mechanics of what they're doing. But I know some guys have benefited from it. But you're going to be playing against good players both places, and your exposure is going to be is going to be good either way. So I don't think either one of them is a mistake. I just think what fits that person is probably more ideal for them.
With high school sports now, with you being a former Jessamine County player, they're having like changes to each county where you can enroll as a non-resident, and mainly seen as like a sports rule. What do you think about that situation?
Now, is that a recent thing?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And again, that's probably something I'm a little out of touch with. I know things change and evolve, right? I mean, sports evolve, societies evolve. So, societies evolve in good ways and in bad ways, and all this. I know families and players, athletes are trying to find the best fit for them when they're in middle school and high schools and things of that nature. And if it's important enough for the family to relocate and all this kind of thing, then to each their own, and that's fine. When you're a parent of a 16 or 17-year-old and you feel the clock ticking, that their high school career is soon to be over, there's a lot of pressure involved within that family of what's the best way to parent my child, as far as moving from one place to another and this kind of thing. So it's a stressful scenario, and hopefully there's enough of a leeway so if people are in maybe a tough situation, they can be mobile enough to do the right thing for their family, but also there's enough guardrails up within the rules that it's not just completely crazy on if you don't like a certain Tuesday, on Wednesday you can go somewhere else. There's got to be some practicality of all those things.
All right, Landon, I'll go to you for some more questions.
All right. So I always love when we get to have college basketball coaches on here, because someone like myself or others out there that are looking to become a coach, I always like to ask you guys, what is some advice you would give us?
Don't do it. You guys are wanting to be college coaches?
That's my plan right now. That's what I'm looking to.
Okay. Well, I'm kidding when I say that, by the way. But it's a mixed bag of a very tough industry. There's a really tough business side of it. There's a beautiful side of it, of getting to interact with these players and their lives, and it doesn't make sense, but I have found that when I get on the court with them in September, an individual, if they realize I can help them on how to do a dribble pull up better with a how to change their technique or skill a certain way, it doesn't make sense, but they're more apt to listen to me on life matters, and so it's just fascinating that you can be impactful for a young person, hopefully in a positive way, just because you can show them how to hold the ball a certain way, or a dribble move a certain way, or improve some part of their skill to have them become a better player. So there's a part of that that's beautiful, but when I first got into the business, I was just super naive to how the whole thing worked, because there's definitely a business side to it. If some of my mentors that I just think a lot of, they have been able to handle all those things and still just really enjoy it. I've seen a lot of guys who get so torn up over the business side of it, dealing with administration or their supervisors, and unhappy with one thing or another of the inner workings of the college they work for, that they end up getting out of it, and maybe that was the right decision for them, but I would tell people to just, if you can try to understand the business side of it as soon as possible, therefore you can balance out how to deal with that part of it so that you can enjoy the coaching aspect of it, and how to deal with failure is huge, and how to help a player deal with failure is huge. I think another big deal, an enormous situation is a lot of times our age group or your age group doesn't know how to deal with success. If they have a run of a successful practices or games, or sometimes they have a hard time learning from it and improving on it. And so here when we find some success, we try to realize, okay, we're living in a short time period where this person or our team has had success. Now, how do we deal with this, right, in the proper way? And we have stumbled with that over the years, but we think that over time we've done a pretty good job of that, of how to build on success and not just be complacent with it, But coaching is it's an incredible profession, There's so few jobs out there that are available. That's the unfortunate thing at the college level. There's just so few jobs available that you can even make a living on, because there's not a lot of money involved in this business. Like 1% of our coaching business, our industry makes 99% of the money. So if that were a little spread out a little more even, it'd be a little more fruitful profession to be in. So, but having as many mentors, diverse mentors, different levels, middle school, high school, pros, male, female, all these kind of things. I think having diverse mentors is pretty critical as well, so you can have a better understanding of the entire business.
I always love to hear those different answers and what you guys come up with. So some kids believe, especially the friends that I have, that if they don't go D1, then that they failed and that maybe they should give up. But going anywhere to play college ball is success in my eyes. So what would you tell young athletes out there today about playing in NAIA and why it can be just as attractive as going D1?
I would tell them, don't talk to the coaches. Just talk to any NCAA player that's also played in NAIA. That's all they have to do, And nearly 100% of the time, they will realize that this is hard, And of course, I've had a lot of players from Division I that have played for me, and for the most part, and I say most part, I don't know that I can think of anybody that didn't. Those guys had such a mature mindset and a respectful mindset coming here. They respected our place. They respected the competition, because they know, how many good players are out there, and the fine line of a really good player playing for an NAIA school versus a Division II or Division I school. Sometimes there is no line. And we've had a few teams here that we've probably had, 3, 5, 6 players that, would have been very successful at the Division I level, or already were at Division I level. I've had guys from the ACC, the SEC. I think I've had guys from just about every major conference that have played for me, and not all of them have been successful players at this level, but they've all come in with very mature mindsets about it. But if the AAU world and if they would just talk to players that have played both, this odd thing that's happened over the last 12 or 15 years about this Division I thing or bust, it wouldn't exist. It doesn't bother me, by the way. I'm over it. I don't. If I ever hear of a player not wanting to play at an NAIA school, I just move on to the next good player. I don't worry about it. So it doesn't bother me as much as it used to years ago.
I think finish my questions off with this, Coach. So, going into the season at Union, what are some goals you would like for your team to achieve, not only on the court, but off the court as well?
Well, believe it or not, we are actually still recruiting. And I would be able to answer that question if I know who our last two players we're going to sign are, but we're going to be. But we're going to probably have an expectation of trying to win our conference championship. That's our path of playing in the national tournament is to win our regular season championship. We can also win the conference championship to punch our ticket, but we don't even talk about the conference tournament until the conference tournament rolls around. We are sold on the regular season. That's all we're focused on, and we want to win the thing. And we've been fortunate enough to win it every year. Now, the COVID year, there was not a regular season champion, but the other of the last 9 seasons, the 8 years that there was a regular season champion, we've been fortunate to win it every time. And we've also won the conference tournament 9 straight years. So we've actually swept our conference on both the regular season and the conference tournament for 9 years. And so that accomplishment is an enormous one, obviously. And I know each team comes in the following year, they don't want to be the first team to not do it, So obviously it's not going to last forever, but we're going to probably have those same expectations of trying to win our conference championship. And whether we do or not, we don't know. The neat thing about our experience here is our players have such a healthy respect for how hard it is. My returners do such a good job with our new players of telling them, hey, the teams in our league are so sick of us winning this thing. It is hard to win, And if you look at the scores over the years, I mean, it's just, we don't blow anybody out. I mean, they're all close games, and it's hard, So, but we actually had, just to brag on my players, I think in 15, 16, and 17, we actually spent 3 seasons going undefeated in our conference in away games. And that's the one item, by the way, that I think might be arguably more impressive than winning, or at least as impressive as winning a national championship. To go 3 years in a row consecutively and win every single away game. And when you've won the league a few years, they're kind of waiting on you too. It's not like we surprised them, And so for our players to have that kind of focus and ambition to want to achieve it is something that I'm just over the moon proud of them for. I've had a bunch of really fun teams to coach, great kids. They're very, the last 2 or 3 years I've had the nicest kids, and I'm sure those other programs have had nice kids, but we've had the most nice, polite kids I believe I've ever had. And so we would like to continue that culture, of course, and with COVID going away, we're going to get to reach back out to our community, because we've not done we've been very heavily community involvement here until the last 2 years, and so we'll get back into the schools and all that kind of thing this upcoming year. So I know our players are looking forward to that. So now, Turner, I hear your dad's a coach somewhere. Is that true?
Yeah, surprisingly.
Now, your dad, I was the assistant coach at Asbury for a little while when he was a player, and I talked about it a little while ago about talking to players that you can tell basketball means a lot to them and things of that nature, and that was a pretty easy read for me to read him. Basketball meant a whole lot to him when he was younger, and watching him, do what he's done through his playing career and coaching career, that's just a really neat thing for me to sit back and watch. And he knows this. Asbury is a team I root for, and I keep up with their scores and watch what they're doing and things of that nature. So, hopefully he'll be be there for a lot longer and continue all the success they've had, because it's super neat to watch, and it means a lot to him, and that place means a lot to him. That's what makes it really special, watching the success he's had there.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it. My last thing that I'd like ask all my guests is if there's any more advice or like anything on your mind that you want to talk about. So do you have anything like that for us?
Well, I said earlier, I appreciate what you're all trying to get accomplished in this platform. I think that you guys reaching out to as many diverse areas of our sport, to hear the inner workings of how things operate, would be a really enlightening experience for all your listeners and yourselves as well. And I just think it's really neat you're all doing this, and I think it's great, and I think that you all should continue to reach out to as many diverse people that will join you that you possibly can.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. We'll let you go here. And so, Coach, you have a good rest of your night, and Landon, you too.
Thank you,
All right,
Turner.
Landon.
All right, I appreciate you all.
Thanks for that. Take care.
You too.
You too.